the mic is open, and we have ironed out some technical difficulties
刚才我们遇到了一些技术上面的问题。
with the moon in Virgo tonight,
今天月亮又恰好在处女座，
and we are ready to go.
现在我们就要开讲了。
I want to talk with you tonight about a tool that is very useful for focusing on specific months.
我今晚想跟大家讲一个技术，这个技术非常有用，特别是如果我们把关注点就关注某一个月。
And this is called a lunar return chart.
那么这个图呢，就是月亮反照图。
This is one of the series of return charts that you can use very effectively as a forecasting tool.
那么这是一个作为预测而言非常有用的一个工具。
Last week, we took a look at solar return charts.
上周我们看了看太阳反照图，
And I hope that you have spent some time and will continue to looking back at your life, the life of friends and family, and looking at solar return charts, see how that reflected that time in your life or the life of people you know.
我希望呢，大家你们都回去看了看自己或者家人或者朋友过往一些年份的太阳反照图，看看你从图中是这个图太阳反照图是否反映了那一年你或者你的家人和朋友的一些状况。
And in the same way that a solar return chart reflects a year, a lunar return chart will reflect a month.
太阳反照图反映的是一年的状况，而月亮反照图反映的是一个月的状况。
Now, this month is not a calendar month. It's not like you can say just August or September or October.
那么这个月份呢，指的不是我们日历的月份，我们不是指8月、9月、10月这样的月份。
But it is a measure of approximately 28 days or 27.5 days.
但是呢，它是对27.5天或者是28天的一个量度。
From when the moon will return to the exact degree of your birth chart every 28 days.
就是每28天，月亮就会回到你出生盘的月亮所在的位置。
So it is a measure of about 4 weeks.
所以说呢，它是大概4周的一个亮度。
And when you are working with your clients and you're focusing on particular time frames, this can become very useful.
所以说，当你和你的客户一起做咨询的时候，这个你就可以专注于某个特定的月份。
On the most practical level, a lunar return chart can provide you with some insight regarding conditions that could have a significant impact on the decision making of your client.
那么从实际的角度来讲呢，这个月亮反照图可以看到你的客户他所做的决定，就是说对他要做一些决定会有什么样的影响。
Now, because it is a lunar return chart, it also reflects not only conditions, issues, circumstances, but it also reflects the emotional state, the emotional status of your client.
因为它是一个月亮反照图，所以说它反映出来的不仅仅是外境，不仅仅是一些事件，它也反映出你的客户的内在的情绪。
So think about how valuable that is from a counseling or therapeutic point of view.
所以说，你想一想，如果从一个咨询或者一个疗愈的角度来讲，这是多么的有意义。
Because remember, the event is only significant in terms of what the event means.
因为警示就是事件的意义来自于这个事件的价值来自于事件有什么意义。
And if you can help your clients to understand the meaning of what is developing in their life, both externally and internally, you are helping them in a very important way.
所以说，如果你能够帮助你的客户了解外在的和内在的事件 到底是发生了什么，有什么样的意义，那么你就极大的帮助了他们。
Okay. We have a number of them to look at tonight.
今晚我们有好几张月亮反照图要来看。
So it's quite possible that your head may be spinning at the end of this webinar tonight.
所以说呢，可能在这个我们这堂课结尾的时候呢，你的脑袋会像陀螺那样飞转。
Maybe spinning like the moon.
也许就像月亮那样的转圈儿。
And that's okay.
这也挺好。
Because if you practice with these lunar return charts, you will find again that they can really support you in working with your clients for specific time frames.
因为如果是你去练习月亮反照图的话，你会发现在一定的时期，它确实能够帮助你跟你的客户做工作。
Like a solar return, a lunar return will stand on its own as a symbolic picture.
就像太阳反照图一样，月亮反照图呢，它也可以单独的去看，这是一个单独的象征性的图画。
And with the same technique that you used with solar return charts, you will also compare the lunar return back to the natal chart.
那也和我们看太阳反照图一样，你也可以看月亮反照图和本命盘出生图的对比图。
So both are true.
所以说这两个都可以来看。
The lunar return chart is a symbolic picture by itself, and it's used in comparison with the natal.
月亮反照图就是可以自己去看，就像一个象征的画面一样，也可以和出生图相比对。
Let's start briefly here with the birth chart and the natal chart of Prince Charles.
我们先从查尔斯王子的出生图来看。
When you look at his chart, the moon has prominence even in the natal chart.
如果你看他的图的话呢，那么月亮在他的出生图上是在一个非常显著的位置。
The moon is angular.
它在四轴上。
Meaning in an angle house, it's in the 10th house.
它是在10宫。
It is square the ascendant.
四分了上升点。
It is conjunct the north node.
合向了北焦点。
It is trine to Saturn.
而且它三分了土星。
It is opposite Mercury.
还对分了水星。
Many astrologers over the course of the last 68 years, how long is it? 1948, 60, going on 67 years. Many astrologers have commented on how the moon in Prince Charles' chart represents his mother, the Queen.
那么在过去67年间，许多占星师都说查尔斯王子星图上的月亮代表了他的母亲，也就是女皇。
However, as astrologers, we know that the moon is not only going to represent mom, it's going to represent significant women in our life and overall family and family condition.
那么作为占星师呢，我们也知道，月亮不只是代表母亲，它还代表你的生活中的重要的女性，还有家庭和家庭的状况。
And the moon, of course, is a primary reference to the emotional state or emotional well-being of your client.
那么月亮呢，也是你的客户的情绪状态，或者是他的内心的幸福感。
What is your client's emotional nature?
你的客户的情绪的本性。
What are their emotional issues?
他们的情绪问题又会是什么？
We could spend probably the whole night just talking about Prince Charles and his issues.
我们可以花一整个晚上来谈查尔斯王子和他的一个议题。
But it's easy to see that with the North Node in Taurus in the 10th and the Moon in Taurus in the 10th, that he has a need to prove his worth, to prove his value in terms of his career and public life.
那么，因为他的北焦点和月亮都在10宫金牛座，所以说他需要向公众需要去证明他的价值。
In many ways, it is an attempt of a child to prove his worth or value in earning the respect of his mother.
那么从很多方面来讲，在他童年，他就需要向他的母亲去证明他作为一个孩子的价值，去获得母亲的尊重。
Of course, there are secondary mother indications in the chart,
当然，在他的星图上还有第二个母亲的指征，
which we have touched on in the past,
我们过去也讲过，
that being Venus,
那个就是金星，
and Venus is conjunct Neptune in Libra in the 4th house.
金星合相海王星在天秤座第4宫，
That is very different symbolism from a moon in Taurus in the 10th house.
那么这个和10宫的金牛座月亮非常不同。
A Venus-Neptune conjunction in Libra represents an idealized experience of love and affection.
金海合相在天秤座意味着一个理想化的爱和情感。
This idealization may be the result of neglect,
那么这种理想化可能是因为被忽视而来带来的一种结果，
and or may correspond to the love and affection of a secondary mother figure.
也可能是因为一个像母亲这样的女性人物给她的爱，也可以代表着这个爱。
And I won't dwell on it, but in Prince Charles's case, the secondary mother figure was his nanny.
那么我不想在这方面多陈述了，不过在他的生活中，第二个母亲的这样一个代表人物是他的保姆。
So he had two women during the early period of his life, the first 5 or 6 years of his life.
所以说，在他的童年，特别是他的生命的最早的5到6年间，他在生命中有2个女人。
He had a mother that was somewhat remote and busy, 10th house, with her job as queen.
他有个母亲，那么这个母亲呢，因为她的工作非常的忙碌，因为她是作为女皇，这个是月亮10宫所指代的。
With whom he felt a certain amount of pressure.
而且因为他这个跟这个母亲这个母亲也给他带来很多的压力。
The pressure to behave well whenever she was around.
对，这个压力就来自于每当母亲在身边的时候，我就得听话。
Especially in regards to public situations or public appearances.
特别是当在公众面前露面的时候，更要如此。
With his nanny, however, he had unconditional affection, love, and support as a young child.
但是呢，和保姆在一起，他却有了这个保姆无条件的爱和支持。
So he had the split feminine thing.
所以说呢，他的内在呢有2个非常割裂的2个女性的这样的形象。
Which of course played out in his married life with his affair with Camilla, and of course Princess Di and what she represented.
当然了，在他的真实的爱情生活中，这2个女性的形象就由戴安娜王妃和卡米拉2个女性来代表。
Okay. All right, let's take a look here. We have the position of the moon on August 22nd, 1997.
那么这是月亮1997年 which 8月22，1997年8月22号，它的月亮反照盘。
Okay. Now, suppose Prince Charles is coming to you as a client.
假设查尔斯王子来找你做咨询。
Suppose it's not even Prince Charles, but somebody with a chart like it.
假设这不是查尔斯王子，但是有他一模一样的星盘。
Well, you would know a lot about him because of that natal moon in Taurus up in the 10th house.
因为那个出生图上月亮在10宫金牛座，你会了解他许多。
But now you would see the moon in Taurus is down here on the 2nd house cusp.
但是在这张图上，你看到月亮金牛座的月亮在2宫宫头。
That would be sort of interesting.
这个有一点点有趣。
By itself, you might think, gee, maybe there's going to be some financial or property decisions this month. I'll ask my client.
那么你就看这个月亮，你可能会想，他可能要做一些比方说金融上的或者是地产上的一些决定，我会问问我这个客户。
But then you would quickly notice that the moon was opposite Mars and square Uranus.
不过呢，你立刻就看到这个月亮四分了火星，然后呢，对分了火星，四分了天王星。
And you would notice that the square between Mars and Uranus was very tight.
你也会看到火天的这个四分相非常的紧密。
You would notice that Mars not only was in Scorpio, but in the 8th house.
而且你注意到火星不仅仅是在天蝎座，它还在第8宫。
And this should get your attention about this month.
那么这个应该引起你的注意，对这个月份的注意。
You might make a short list of questions you would ask your client when they came in.
那当你的客户进门的时候呢，你就应该列好一系列的问题，这些问题呢，你要去问你的客户。
Some of these might be very practical questions.
有些问题可能是非常实际的问题。
If you were thinking of this aspect from a business point of view, you might be thinking about property investments, financial investments, or property that he already owns.
那么如果是你从商业的角度来考虑这个问题的话，可能是一些房产啊、地产的投资，或者是他已经拥有的一些房地产方面的事宜。
It might be natural to ask him, do you have good insurance policies on property that you own?
你自然一个可以很自然问他的问题就是，你所拥有的房产上面，你有没有给他们做保险？
That would adequately replace something if it was to be damaged or destroyed.
那么这个保险呢，可以他去将来，如果你这个房产有的地方被损坏了，或者是被毁坏了，这个保险可以帮助你弥补那样一个损失。
Now your client might be alarmed, of course, and ask you, well, what are you saying? You think some of the apartment buildings I own are going to burn down?
那你的客户呢，当然他也会很警觉，他会问你什么意思呢？你的意思是说我的那个公寓或者我那个房子会着火还是怎么着？And
I would say I have no idea.
那我会对他说我不知道。
But I do know that this suggests you are at greater risk for accidents or hazardous developments that could negatively impact property, money, business. So we got to look at those things.
我会说，那我不知道，但是我知道的是呢，可能会有一些危险会影响你的房产、你的金钱等等，所以说你的投资，所以说我们应该去看一看这方面的事情。
Now, if you knew this client fairly well, let's say he had been to see you 2-3 times before.
那么如果是你对这个客户还相当了解，我们说他过去见过你2-3次。
You might know that he was divorced.
你可能会知道，这个客户他已经离婚了。
And that he had a shared custody arrangement with the 2 sons.
那么他和他的妻子呢，2个人共同拥有2个儿子的抚养权。
You would be thinking about family because we're talking about the moon here.
你会想到家庭，因为我们在这儿想的是月亮。
Which includes children.
这个也包括孩子。
Mother.
母亲。
Ex-wives.
前妻。
Or current wife.
或者现在的妻子。
Okay, because the ex-wife is the mother of his son.
因为你的前妻是他的前妻是他的2个儿子的母亲。
Okay, so you would want to question him about those things.
所以说呢，你也会问一问这方面的事情。
You might say, when are your sons going to be visiting or staying with their mom next?
你会问他，你的儿子下一次什么时候去见他们的母亲呢？
He might say, well, they just returned from being with her, and so they're going to be starting back school, and they're not going to be with her during this month.
那么他可能说，他们刚刚从他们妈妈那里回来，他们要上学了，所以说在这个月呢，他们不会跟母亲在一起。
And you would say, okay, well, then you say, well, how is your mom doing?
那你就问他一下，那你妈妈现在如何呢？
Have there been any unusual developments in her life?
那你妈妈的生活中有什么不同寻常的一些事情吗？
He would say, no, everything seems normal. And does she have anything unusual planned for the next month?
那么他可能会说，没有，我看一切都正常。他下一个月有什么不同寻常的安排吗？计划吗？
He said, no, she's got some time off and I think she had a trip she was going to take, but she canceled it. So there's really nothing going on significant.
刚才那个问题是占星师问的啊，然后这个客户回答，没有什么，好像一切都是正常。他本来有一个旅行，但是他又取消了，所以说现在还是就是跟往常一样，没有什么不同寻常的事情。
And you and your current girlfriend, you're getting along fine, are you?
然后那占星师又问，你和你现在的女朋友，你们俩相处得好吗？
Because I'd be wondering, I see the Mars opposite the moon, Mars square Uranus, but I notice Venus is trine Uranus, so that's not all stress.
虽然说我看到火月天的这个T三角，但是呢，我也看到了金星、三分天狼星，所以说这个星图上并不是都是这些非常紧张的相位。
And he might say, no, everything's fine there. And then you would say, well, what about, how are things going with your ex-wife?
那么他可能说，我和我女朋友相处挺好的。然后呢，我就可能问，那你的前妻呢？她怎么样？
And he would probably say this. He would say, oh, that's a hard subject right now.
他可能会对你说，这个现在是一个比较困难的话题。
She is really acting crazy.
她现在真的是很发疯。
I don't know. I mean, she never acted like this when she was married to me.
他可能说，他跟我结婚的时候，他从来没有这样的行为。
But she's dating some guy who has a lot of money, who leads a kind of reckless lifestyle.
他可能是说，他现在跟一个很有钱的家伙在一起，这个人的生活方式非常的鲁莽。
I mean, I know it's not her fault, but there's been photographs of her in a bikini. There's been played all over the newspapers, all over the tabloids.
他说，我看到他就是各种各样他穿着比基尼的照片。
I mean, here's this woman who everybody thought of as practically a saint when she was married to me, but she is acting very different right now.
他可能说，当他跟我在一起的时候，每个人觉得他是圣人。那现在呢，他的行为一点都跟原来不一样了。
My mom is furious with her, is angry about it.
我妈特别生气。
How can the Princess Di be behaving this way?
戴安娜王妃怎么可能做出这样的事儿来？
Now, I know she's my ex-wife, but she still has a certain status, and her behavior is, I don't know, just sort of upsetting everybody in the family.
他说，虽然她是我的前妻，但是她毕竟还有这样的社会位置，她现在的举止让我们全家人都很生气。
Well, then you might say to him, well, the reason I asked you about the kids is because I was thinking about their safety, but also wondering, if they were under the supervision right now of their mom or you.
那么你就跟他说，我之所以问起你的孩子呢，是因为我也在考虑他们的安全性问题，所以我想知道他们是跟你在一起，还是跟他们的妈妈在一起。
Because there is some suggestion in this chart for this month that if your children were under the supervision of their mom, they would be in a more chaotic atmosphere.
因为这张星图上呢，它反映出，如果这个月呢，你的儿子们和他们的妈妈在一起，可能那边会有一些非常混乱的这样的气氛。
And you would talk about that,
然后你就跟你的客户再聊聊这方面的事儿。
If your client wanted to, you might even talk with your client about his feelings about his ex.
如果你的客户想聊的话呢，你甚至可以跟他聊聊他对他前妻的感觉。
You might say to him, look, she has liberated herself from the lifestyle she had when she was married to you.
你可能会对他说，他现在解放了自己，从跟你结婚的那种生活状态中解放了出来。
This Uranus and Mars aspecting your moon shows that she may be going through a period of rebellion where she really is trying to free herself from her past.
那么这个在你星图上的天王星和火星呢，它表示出你的这个前妻，她是在一个反叛型的阶段，她会想要把它从过去中完全解放出来。
And I know this is challenging for you to accept.
我知道这对你来说接受这一点还是蛮有挑战的。
But the sooner you find a way to accept it, the more at peace you'll be with yourself.
但是呢，你越快能够接受这一点，你内心就会越平和。
And if you had a good rapport with your clients, they would listen and you could have a meaningful conversation about this.
如果你和你的客户之间有很好的关系的话呢，他们会听，然后呢，你们之间就会有一场非常有意义的对话。
And that might be as far as the conversation goes.
这个可能你们的刻画也就是能走这么远。
Maybe, but it's very, very doubtful.
可能是这样，但是呢，我也有疑问。
Maybe you would say to him, well, you know, over the next month, your ex-wife is a little bit at risk in terms of some chaos and more craziness in her life.
那么就是说，你可能会说出这样的话，就是下个月你的前妻呢，她的生活中是比较的有些混乱，可能甚至有一些风险。这种话你可能会说出来，但我觉得可能性不大。
And I might say to him, if you have any influence over her life at all, you might tell her she needs to be a little more careful about safety and security over the next month, if she'll even listen to you.
那么你可能会对他说，占星师可能会对他说，查尔斯说，如果你对你的前妻的生活还能有一些影响的话呢，你可以告诉你的前妻一下，他下个月呢可能要注意一下自己的安全问题。
Right. Well, we all know what happened during this month.
不过呢，我们知道在这个月发生了什么。
And this is the month when Princess Di was killed in the automobile accident.
这就是戴安娜王妃她死于那个车祸的那个月。
Okay. And we see that reflected in Prince Charles's chart, because not only does this mean the accidental sudden loss of his ex-wife, but of his children's mother.
我们在查尔斯王子的月亮反照盘上看到了这一点，因为这个月他失去的不仅是他前妻，还是他两个孩子的母亲。
This is going to be a radical change in his parenting role.
那么这是他作为父母职责的这个职责方面的一个非常剧烈的一个变化。
And we know the moon has to do with nurturing, with parenting.
我们知道月亮和滋养、养育相关。
And he's going to have to work with his sons to deal with the loss of their mother.
那么他必须和他的儿子们一起去应对失去母亲的这个痛苦。
So this is a highly significant lunar return that does reflect the atmosphere of that month.
那么这是一个非常显著的月亮反照图，它确实反映了那个月的状况。
And the shocking impact of what happened in Prince Charles' life.
还有在查尔斯王子生活中发生的这个令人震惊的这个影响。
And I want you to notice a couple more things before we go on.
我还希望大家再注意到几点。
You know how much I love the nodes.
你们知道我多么喜欢。
And you cannot escape noticing that the south node is conjunct the ascendant, the north node is conjunct the descendant.
你知道我是多么喜欢南北焦点。你们一定要注意到了南焦点合向上升点，北焦点合向下降点。
The north node always shows with the area where there's going to be new developments.
北焦点总是反映出新的发展方向。
And the new developments would be in partnership, and the seventh house relates to both partner and ex-partner.
那么新的发展方向，因为北焦点合向了下降点，那么下降点不仅是现在的妻子，也是前妻，所以说这个新的发展方向呢，是在他的关系方面。
The south node represents the role that he will sort of out of habit have to play in response to these new developments.
那么南焦点反映出出于习惯，他对这些新的发展方向的一个习惯性的反应。
He must become, or he must play the role, let's say, of the compassionate father, a compassionate man, dealing with a highly sensitive situation.
作为一个有同情心的父亲，有同情心的人， 他必须去应对这样一个高度敏感的事件。
There are other things that we can notice about this chart if you wanted to explore it briefly.
如果是你还要简要的去探索一下这个月亮反照图，我们还可以看到其他的一些方面。
The moon is quincunx Pluto.
月亮是和冥王星梅花相位。
Well within the 3-degree range.
在3度容许度之内。
And the sun is square Pluto.
而太阳又4分了冥王星。
So we have some additional aspects that suggest more 8th house theme.
所以说我们有一些再次反映出8宫主题的这些相位。
Okay. All right, I'm going to switch over to the chat.
我们再看下面一个。
Here we have some questions. Somebody needs to turn off their mic.
有位同学开了麦克，你要关一下。Someone asked, this chart is on August 22nd, so does that mean it signify all the issues happened after?
That's right. That's right.
有位同学问，这个盘是8月22日的。是不是指8月22日以后那1个月要发生的事情？老师说是的。
For the 28 days following.
就是说这个是展现出月亮反照盘之后的28天的状况。
Okay.
然后is that because he is a male, so we need to look at Sun square Pluto?
No, I would look at it whether it was the chart of a woman or a man.
这位同学问，因为是男性，所以要看太阳4分冥王星吗？老师说不是的，就是不论是男性和女性，我都会看他的。
Remember, you should always be looking for themes.
要记得，你们一定总是要去看主题，主旋律是什么。
And when you see that Mars in Scorpio in the 8th house, you should be a detective and nose around a little bit and see if there's anything else going on involving Pluto or the 8th house or Scorpio.
你要记得，当你看到火星在8宫的时候呢，你就马上要去像一个侦探一样，看看这个星盘上的冥王星，或者是天蝎座或者8宫还有什么其他的东西。
Okay. Another question there. We have 12 months but have 13. That's correct. So it's not an extra chart, it's just a different calendar. Tell them that. Repeat the question.
因为这位同学问，我们有12个月，但是有13个月亮反照盘，那个多余出来的是怎么回事？老师说，并不是多余出来的，它是不同的。你要想它是不同的日历，不是我们的1、2、3、4、5月这个样的。
Right. There's no such thing as an extra month. Are you wanting an extra month of vacation?
并没有说1年多出了1个月啊，难道你希望有多出1个月的假期吗？
All right. It doesn't work that way.
并非如此。
Okay.
People.
I hope so, yeah. Any other questions before we go on?
In lunar return chart, our emphasis is to pay more attention to the moon.
Yes. The moon, just like in the solar return chart, the sun has priority. The moon has priority in a lunar return chart.
这位同学问，月亮反照盘重点看月亮是吗？老师说是的，就像太阳反照盘重点看太阳一样。
And also true when it comes to a lunar return chart. The place that a person is located at the time of their lunar return is where you set up that lunar return.
另外呢，你做月亮反照盘的时候呢，也是做这个人所在地的月亮反照盘。
And we're about to look at a dramatic example of this.
我们要看一看一个非常戏剧化的例子。
Okay. Here is the natal chart, the birth chart of Johnny Depp.
这是约翰德普的出生图。
I'm sorry he couldn't be with you tonight.
抱歉，他今天晚上不能和大家在一起。
But he's busy shooting another mysterious film right now.
不过他现在呢，在忙着拍另外一部神秘影片。
Maybe next year.
也许明年吧。
When you look at Johnny Depp's chart, it's not too difficult to see why he was attracted to the film world.
当你看 约翰德普的星图的话呢，你看到他被这个电影业所吸引，这一点看出来并不太难。
You may say, why?
你可能说啊，为什么呢？为什么呀？
Because if you look at Neptune in his chart, number one, you'll see that Neptune is angular.
因为你看他星盘上的海王星，首先你看到海王星呢是在4轴附近。
It is closely square the ascendant.
而且它紧密四分上升点。
And his ascendant or rising sign is Leo.
而它的上升点是狮子座。
But here we have a challenge to Leo rising, which is Neptune square the ascendant.
但是对这样一个上升狮子的人来说呢，有一个挑战的状况，因为海王星4分了上升点。
So we have someone with a sensitive, even hypersensitive Leo rising.
所以说呢，这是一个非常敏感，甚至说超敏感的这样一个人。
Keep in mind, the outer planets are kind of what we call the crazy-making planets.
你一定要记得，外行星，我们常把外行星叫做带来疯狂的行星。
In that they will resonate with whatever craziness is in us.
因为这些外行星也反映了我们内在的疯狂。
Right. And Neptune can be a fairly overwhelming experience.
海王星呢，可能是一个非常非常压垮我们的一个经历。
Imagine you have Leo rising.
想想看，你的上升是狮子座，
But you're at the bottom of the swimming pool.
但是呢，你又在那个游泳池的池底。
How do you get everybody's attention?
你怎么才能让每个人都注意到你呢？
That's not an easy thing to do.
这可不是一个容易做到的事情。
They can't hear me. They can't hear me.
你在那个游泳池底下一个劲儿吐泡泡，就别人说别人也听不到你在说什么，别人也看不见你。
Okay? And so this need to assert oneself from a Leo point of view, to be creative, to be dynamic, to be dramatic, also involves being able to break through this sensitivity, but also to express it.
所以说呢，要打破他的这个敏感，要以一个狮子座的方式，非常戏剧化的，非常这个非常多姿多彩的把自己展现出来，其实是很有挑战的。
The next time you see Johnny Depp in a film, or if you want to go watch Pirates of the Caribbean or something tonight or tomorrow night, watch his behavior.
下次你要再看约翰尼德普的影片，比如说你今天晚上决定你去看一看《加勒比海盗》，你去看一看他的举止。
And you will see this Neptune square the ascendant at work.
你就会看到这个海王星4分上升点的。
He always looks at you like, I'm here. At least I think I'm here.
他好像总是这样一副举止，就是说我在这儿，至少我认为我在这儿。
Maybe I'm not.
也许我不在这儿。
What do you think?
你觉得呢？
There is just a little craziness about this guy.
就这个人身上就有那么一点点疯狂。
And he can play scary people really well.
而且他可以去扮演那种特别可怕的人，扮演得很好。
Of course, you may think, well, that's Pluto is scary people.
你可能会想，那是可怕的人是冥王星的事儿。
But Neptune also can fake scary people because they're scary and crazy.
但实际上呢，海王星也可以装作很可怕的人，因为他们既疯狂又可怕。
And in films, he's played crazy people.
他在影片中确实也扮演疯狂的人。
Okay.
疯子。
He also has, of course, some 10th house planets. He's the need for recognition.
那么他的时宫呢，也有一些行星，也有那种强烈需要被认可的这样的需求。
And he also has a need, if we look at his North Node in Cancer, in the 12th house being another Neptune house, a need to express complex emotions, share those with the world.
另外呢，他的北焦点在12宫巨蟹座，所以说呢，他需要把他的那些复杂的情感和世界分享。
And I don't know if Johnny Depp has done much stage acting. He could probably do that, but he's really more of the classic film actor, which means he likes that behind-the-scenes quality that shooting a film does to you, because you're not in front of an audience then. It's not like stage acting.
我不知道约翰尼·德普他是不是演那些舞台剧演戏剧？我觉得呢，他更像是一个愿意拍电影的人，因为拍电影实际上是那种在幕后，你不必要真的是跟观众，就是让观众一下全部看到你的那种表演。
Somebody with the North Node in Cancer may get a little bit of fulfillment from turning to the person next to them and whispering in confidence.
那么一个北焦点在巨蟹座12宫的人，他可能会有这样感觉，他可能偷偷的跟他身边的人那样耳语说，我感觉到我好像在情绪上都快被淹死了，我的情绪快淹死我了。
But he doesn't want to just say this to one person. He wants to whisper it to everybody.
但是他不想仅仅把这个跟一个人窃窃私语，他想把这句话告诉所有人。
And that's the 12th house.
那就是12宫。
He's also ambitious, hardworking. He's got Moon in Capricorn, South Node in Capricorn. He's done a lot of films.
他也是非常的有野心，非常的勤奋。他拍了非常多的电影，因为他的南焦点和月亮都在摩羯座，还在第6宫。
He is not a lazy person.
他可不是一个懒人。
He definitely has the Capricorn work ethic.
他毫无疑问有摩羯座的那种工作职业道德。
However, he is excessive.
但是呢，他是一个很过度的一个人。
Look, he's got Jupiter exactly square the moon.
你看他的木星准确的4分月亮。
This again expands his need to find an outlet for his feelings, which Moon in Capricorn is like, I'm not so sure. Capricorn resists expressing emotions.
Can you say the first?
Sure. Yeah. The Jupiter square to the moon expands the need to express emotion.
木星4分月亮呢，它会扩展了这个人想他表达情感的这样的需求，因为月亮在摩羯座呢，会觉得他会对真的是显露情感会有一些抗拒。
But the Capricorn moon probably has struggled with this, which is why he found a job, work that gives him permission to do this.
但是呢，这个摩羯座的月亮确实是他觉得这个还是蛮难的，这是为什么他找到了这样一个工作，这个工作许可他，允许他把这些情感夸张的表达出来。你看月亮还在第6宫。
In a normal job, he might have had trouble.
如果是在一个正常的普通的工作上，他估计他会惹麻烦。
All right, let's take a look at a lunar return for Johnny Depp.
我们看一看约翰尼·德普一张月亮反照图。
All right, let's go on here. Let's go down here. Here we go. This is his lunar return that occurred on May 6th in 1999 in Paris.
这是1999年在巴黎的一张月亮反照图。
Johnny Depp was working on a film, and he had his family living with him over in France at this time.
在那个时候呢，德普他是在巴黎拍一个片子，他的家人也跟他在一起。
And it so happens that at the moment of his lunar return in Paris, and this is just such a perfect example of the importance of the place.
非常有趣的是，在巴黎的这个时刻很有趣，月亮反照盘上的月亮紧密合向了上升点。
Here is the moon right on the ascendant.
月亮正好在上升点。
Can somebody close the door, please?
可能把外面给关上。
No, this. No. That's not what I meant.
I know, but I want to close outside because nobody outside.
Sure. Great. Okay. And so here we have the one place on the globe where the moon would be on the ascendant in his lunar return chart.
那么 在世界上呢，就在这个地方，我们做出来月亮反照盘，月亮正好在它的上升点。
If he was in England, this wouldn't be happening.
如果他在英国的话呢，这个月亮就不会在它的上升点上。
If he was in Hollywood, this wouldn't be happening.
如果他在好莱坞，他的月亮也不会在上升点。
If he was in Beijing, this wouldn't be happening.
如果他在北京，也不会有这种状况。
Okay? So I want you to see how there is this incredible synchronicity that occurs with place.
所以说，你看一看，就是说，这个跟地点的这样的共识性是多么的显著。
Because this was the birth of his first daughter.
因为这张图，它展现出来的是他的第一个女儿诞生的情景。
Whose name, as you can see over here, Lily Rose.
那么他的第一个女儿呢，大女儿名字叫 Lily Rose。
And she was born May 27th, 1999.
那么他的女儿就出生在1999年5月27日。
All right. And you can see that was well within the range of that 28 days.
所以你看一看，这就是在那个28天的这个范围之内。
Now I want you to notice some other features of this chart.
我希望你看一看这个星图的一些特点。
How is the moon aspected?
这个月亮有什么样的相位呢？
You just gotta love this. The moon is trine the sun.
月亮三分太阳。
And look at this. It's a close trine.
这个三分相蛮紧密的。
That's nice.
这不错。
But look at the sun.
那你看看太阳的位置。
Not only is this the only place that we would have the moon on the ascendant, it's the place where the sun is right on the IC.
不仅仅月亮合向上升点，而太阳呢又合向了下中天。
We have a double statement about family.
那么在这张星图上呢，关于家庭的这个主题出现了2次。
The moon is always about family, or always possibly about family.
那么月亮呢，总是和家庭相关。
But we know that the 4th house is also family.
我们知道下中天第4宫也是家庭。
And here the sun is right on the angle, right on the IC.
那么太阳呢，就紧密合向下中天。
We also have the sun square very closely Uranus.
而太阳呢，还4分了天王星。
It's going to happen soon. It's going to bring a certain amount of chaos into his life.
那么这个马上这个4分相就紧密成像了啊，所以说这个他的生活中会有一些混乱。
The birth of a child can oftentimes be disruptive.
那么第一个孩子的出生，孩子的出生总是会给我们的生活带来一些混乱。
We can see that the sun is square not only Uranus but the nodes.
我们看到太阳不仅4分了天王星，而且4分了南北焦点。
And it is true that filming had to stop while he spent time with his wife and baby daughter.
那么没错，那个当时呢，这个拍摄被迫就终止了，因为他需要跟他的太太和他的这个小女儿在一起。
Okay. Any questions about this one before we go on?
大家对这个图有什么疑问吗？如果没有疑问，我们就讲下一个图了。
Okay, great. All right. All right. Here's the chart of a client of mine.
这是我的一个客户的星图。
Actually, oh yeah, that's right. This is a long-time client.
这是我的长期客户。
And you can see in her natal chart certain themes.
你可以在她的星图上看到一些主题。
You have the South Node in Leo.
它的南焦点在狮子座。
And the Sun in the 8th house.
而太阳在第8宫。
So there's a little bit of emphasis upon issues relating to partners' money, partners' resources, as well as sexual intimacy issues, etc.
所以说呢，这个和伴侣的钱、伴侣的资源，还有他们之间的性关系，这个一起反映出来。
And Pluto is conjunct the South Node and conjunct Mercury to add to the 8th house theme.
而且冥王星合相了南焦点，又合相了水星，所以加重了八宫的主题。
In addition, she has Mars in Scorpio.
除此之外，她的火星在天蝎座。
So what kind of man do you think she married?
所以说，你们猜她嫁给了一个什么样的男人呢？
Did she marry a weak man that let her control him?
她会嫁给一个很弱的男人，让这个男人控制她吗？
No.
没有。
No.
不是，她控制那个男人吗？
Okay. She married a man who was very controlling of her, or tried to be very controlling of her.
她嫁给了一个非常喜欢控制她的男人。
They were early on in their marriage a very passionate couple, and she worked very hard to make the marriage work. They were married for a long time and had 3 children.
那么呢，他们两个人都非常的努力的想让这个婚姻很顺利。他们刚开始的时候，他们之间很有激情。他们有3个孩子。
You can see that marriage is important to her. She's got the moon in the 7th house, a strong 8th house, Saturn in Libra.
你们知道，婚姻对她很重要。她的月亮是在第7宫，有8宫有很多的行星，土星还在天秤座。
And you see that there's a potential for some conflicts as well.
同时，你们也看到，就在婚姻领域呢，会有一些矛盾的这样的之争。
On the level of appearance, this client appears like a Sag rising woman. You would expect, with a big smile, loves her freedom, has a good sense of humor.
在表面上来看呢，这个女性很像一个上升射手座的人她有一个大大的微笑，喜欢旅行，喜欢她的自由。
And often appears at first to not have a problem.
总是看起来好像没有什么问题。
And will laugh her way in the first 5 minutes of the session. She will laugh her way into serious subjects.
那么在咨询的头5分钟，她总是哈哈大笑，直到笑到那个真的要有一些严肃的议题要开始讲了。
Over the years, of course, it's always been obvious to me that the more she laughs in the beginning of the session, probably the more problems there are that we're going to confront.
这么多年过去，我已经意识到，如果在一开始咨询的时候她笑的越多，那可能我们这个咨询中，我们就需要面对更严重的问题。
Her husband came from a wealthy family.
她的丈夫是来自于一个非常富有的家庭。
And he was a very successful doctor.
而她的丈夫呢，也是一个非常成功的医师。
And made good money.
赚钱赚了很多。
And he, again, tends to be very, very controlling.
那她的丈夫呢，就是非常非常的喜欢控制。
And was also, let's just say they had different opinions on a lot of things.
我们这么说吧，他们对很多事情的意见都不一样，都不一致。
And he never wanted to come in to see me.
而她的丈夫呢，从来就没有想来找我做咨询。
So she was my client.
所以说他是我的客户。
And I could only deal with the issues from her side.
所以说我也只能去从她的这个角度来应对这些问题。
So I would try to help her understand her husband.
不过呢，我试图想让她去理解她的丈夫。
For as long as she wanted to stay married.
只要是她还愿意留在这个婚姻中。
Which was a long time.
他们其实待在一起待了相当久。
But eventually she had enough.
但是最终呢，她受够了。
And decided she wanted a divorce.
这个女士决定呢，她想要离婚。
And they had a long, drawn-out divorce battle.
他们这个离婚大战拉得很长。
Seems like it went on for 2 years.
好像一直打了2年，这个官司。
Lots of confrontation around property and money.
很多就是在地产和金钱方面的这样的冲突。
All of the 8th house things you would expect in the negative sense.
就所有的8宫的负面的事情都发生了。
Okay? And this had been going on for so long, you know, she's a regular client of mine. I'll have to admit, I was getting a little tired of hearing about this.
那么这个离婚这个事儿呢，因为这个客户老来找我，所以说呢，这个离婚这事儿呢又拉得这么长，所以说我得承认，我都有点烦了，老是这个事儿。
So One time, I was looking at everything. I was looking at her transits, her progressions, her solar return. Decided I need to do a lunar return. They're about to have this big negotiation, and I need to do a lunar return.
因为有一次呢，他们要做一个非常就是说一个很大的这样一个协商，一个很重要的协商。所以说我已经看了他的行进推进太阳弧，我决定我看一下他的月亮反照吧。
Because it seemed to me that they were really now at this point not very far away from having a decent agreement from my client.
因为呢，当时我觉得呢，他们离达成一个不错的协议不远了。
So I looked ahead, and when in the session was actually before this date. So I looked ahead at when she was going to be in a negotiation with him.
所以说呢，我就往前看了看他大概在什么时候会跟这个男方再次协商。
Before a judge in a mandated, where they have this mandated have to meet. You know, the court mandates they have to meet, but they have to go in front of a judge.
就是在他们在法庭命令他们见面之前。
You know, and so I looked at this lunar return chart.
所以说我就看了一下这个月亮反照图。
And I set it up for Boulder, Colorado, which is where my client was living at the time.
那么我就那个我的客户当时所在的那个地址。
And there was the moon.
看月亮。
In the 8th house.
月亮在加分了。
And I'm thinking, well, that's interesting because that's just what I want to know about.
我觉得这很有趣，因为这就是我想知道的。
Because I know that's what my client wants to know about.
因为我知道我的客户也想知道这一点。
Now I knew she had been getting some transits that fit this some of the emotional stuff she'd been going through. One of the big transits she had going on at the time we could see, which is Uranus squaring her moon.
我知道当时呢，她的一些行径实际上，一些重大的行径在影响她的情绪，她的状况。我们可以看到天王星4分了月亮。
So there's a certain amount of chaos in her life. Her life is unsettled. She's going through a divorce. She's got still 3 kids, 2 of them still living with her.
那么我们知道她的生活当时是很混乱，她在离婚，还有3个孩子，2个孩子还跟她住在一起。
She's in therapy, she's in counseling, she's trying to heal her own emotional pain about this divorce process. There's Neptune trying the moon.
她也在做心理咨询，她希望去疗愈因为这个离婚而带来的痛苦。我们看到海王星也在3分月亮。
These are transits that she had going on during that whole year.
因为从这个月亮反照图上，实际上我们可以看到当时的行径是什么样的啊？因为月亮总是在一个位置。那么这些我们刚才讲的天王星对月亮的4分相和海王星对月亮的3分相，这张星图上也是看到了那些现在正在进行的正在发生的行径。
At this moment, however, take a look at how the moon is aspected by faster moving planets, Mars, Mercury, and Venus.
不过呢，就在这一时刻，你看一看那些快速运行的行星是怎样影响月亮的。你去看一看火星、水星、金星。
Now I saw this, and the Libra side of me went, yes.
那么我看到这个的时候呢，我的天秤座的那一面就说太棒了。
This looks like a deal to me.
这看上去他们2个应该是达成交易。
I see Mercury at 22 Libra exactly trine this moon in the 8th house.
我看到水星，它就在天秤座22度，紧密的这个3分在8分的月亮。
We know that Mercury is associated with contracts and negotiations, signing papers.
我们知道水星和合同、和谈判、和签署协议联系在一起。
Okay. We see that Mars, which is action, is conjunct Mercury.
我们看见火星是行动，这个火星合上了水星。
And of course, trine the moon.
当然他们2个都3分了月亮。
Okay. So we have harmony We have a harmonious aspect, so-called, a trine, and signs associated with agreement.
那么所以说呢，这个三分相，这个可代表了就是在这些是一些和谐的这样的指征，而且他们还在天平座，意味着应该是能够去达成协议。
And to add to it, we have Jinxing also trine the moon.
同时呢，金星也三分了月亮。
And we can also see that this Mars-Mercury conjunction in Libra now creates a grand trine with Neptune and the moon.
我们也可以看到这个火水金的这个三个行星，它们和月亮、海王星，它们形成了一个大三角。
You can all see that. Say 22, 21, 22, 21. Look at the degrees, people.
所以说我们都可以看到这些，都是在21、22度。
That's unique. This is not an ordinary lunar return.
这就是非常独特的，这可不是一般的一张月亮反照图。
That's significant.
这个是非常显著的指征。
And then I noticed something else.
然后呢，我又注意到其他的一些。
I noticed a close aspect within 1 degree between the Sun and Pluto.
我看到了太阳和冥王星的紧密的这个四分相，只有1度之差。
And it bothered me.
这个呢，也让我感觉到不太爽，不太舒服。
There were other things going on by transit and progression that bothered me too, but this really got my attention.
那么其他就是24件行星呢，还有其他的一些指征，也让我有些不太舒服。不过呢，这个月亮反照上面的这个四分相呢，它引起了我的注意。
It bothered me because, number one, it's a very close aspect, less than 1 degree.
它让我有点不安，是因为这是一个非常紧密的四分相，只有1度之差。
It bothered me because Pluto is in the second house.
它让我不安呢，另外一个原因，因为冥王星又在第2宫。
And I knew we were talking about money.
我知道我们要谈的就是钱。
And naturally I thought about the sun and how it could refer to her husband or other males in her life, but certainly to her husband.
自然我会想太阳是怎么样代表了她的丈夫，当然了，太阳可能是她生命中的其他的男性，不过呢，毫无疑问也是她的丈夫。
So I did ask my client a couple of questions.
所以说，我的确问了我的这个客户好几个问题。
I said, "How's your husband doing? How's his health?"
我问你的丈夫怎么样？他健康如何？
She said, "He's healthy as a horse."
他说他就像一匹马那么壮。
He works out. He looks 10 years younger.
他每天锻炼，他看上去还年轻了10岁。
She said, "He's in great shape and he's a doctor."
他说他的这个身体很好，而且他还是个医生。
I said, "People live a long time in his family?" She said, "Yes."
我要问他，他家里的人都活得很长吗？他说是的。
I said, "Okay, fine."
我说那好吧。
She said, "I know why you're asking me this."
他说我知道你为什么问我这个问题。
She's a regular client of mine. She's no fool.
他是我的一个常规客户，他可不是个傻子。
You know. She said, "You think my husband's going to drop dead?"
他问我，你认为我的丈夫会就是一头栽倒死掉吗？
And I told her the responsible thing. I said, "I have no idea."
我很负责任的告诉他，我真的不知道。
But he looks at risk for some crisis to me.
但是他看上去好像会有一些风险，一些危机。
You know, and I don't know what it is. How is he doing financially?
我不知道会是怎么样。那么他经济上面怎么样呢？
She laughed.
然后他就大笑了起来。
She said, "He's great financially. His family is just loaded with money."
然后他大笑起来，他说他经济上一点问题都没有，他们家里人钱多的花不完。
And he's great. He's fine. He doesn't have a money problem in the world, other than what he's going to have to pay me. She said.
他说他一点没有经济上的问题，除了他需要把钱给我之外。
So I said, "Fine."
我说那好吧。
I said, "But I'll tell you what. I think you need to close the deal, and you need to close it now."
但是我跟他讲，我觉得你应该现在就结束这个，就赶紧签协议，你现在就要签。
I said, "I don't think you're going to get a better lunar return chart than this for closing the deal."
我跟他说，我想你不可能再得到类似的一张这么好的去达成这个就结束这个交易的月亮反照图了。
And she said to me thank you, because that is exactly how I'm feeling.
他对我说谢谢，因为我也真的就是这么感觉的，
Because I've had enough.
因为我也受够了。
And the deal is good enough, I'm ready to take it.
那么他给我的条件是挺不错的，我就决定接受了。
And her deal involved her mainly getting property from him, so she would have income from rental property.
那么这个交易呢，主要是她会从丈夫的那里面拿到一些房产，所以说呢，她的收入呢可以来自于房屋的租金。
So even though he was going to be paying child support, he also, they had to divide up the marital property.
即便是她的丈夫还要去给孩子的这个抚养费，但是呢，他们要把他们的所有拥有的这些房产一分为二。
So she would get deeded over to her in her name a certain amount of property that would then provide income for her.
所以说呢，一部分房产就会归于这个女士的名下。
And he was rich. This was property she would now own free and clear. In other words, there's no mortgage on it.
因为这个男士呢也非常的富有，所以说这些房产就不是那种分期付款的房产啊，就是没有抵押。
Okay, let's go a little further into the future.
我们再进一步看一看，就是更远几个月的他的月亮反照图是什么？
They got the divorce finalized back in September.
他们在9月份的时候，他们最终这个离婚的协议达成了。
Okay. All the property that was going to be, part of her agreement was deeded over to her, and everything was done.
就是说所有的房产，他该给他的都给了。
Then in December, just before Christmas,
那么在12月，就在圣诞节前。
I got a phone call from her, actually an email from her.
那么他给我这个女士给我写了一封邮件。
She said, "Call me up, you won't believe it."
他说你赶快给我打个电话，你不会相信会有这样的事发生。
Okay. And so while I'm on the phone with her, having her tell me what I'm about to tell you, I ran this lunar return chart.
当我一边听他打电话，我一边做了这张月亮反照图。
Now, I want you to look at where the moon is in this lunar return chart.
我希望你们看到，在这张月亮反照上，月亮在什么位置？
This is one hell of a lunar return chart.
这可是一张这个不同寻常的月亮反照啊。
The moon is a full moon.
这是一个满月的月亮反照盘。
You only have one full moon in Gemini every year, and it's not in a lunar return going to be right on your moon.
那么你一年也只有一个月亮在双子座的满月，而且这个月亮反照呢，这个满月呢竟然发生在这个你的月亮反照图上。
And I want you to look at the tight degrees aspecting the moon.
我希望大家看一下这个月亮反照图上的这个紧密的相位。
Let's look at the cast of characters here.
我们看一看这些这个角色吧，月亮反照图上的角色吧。
We got Mars conjunct the Sun, opposing the moon.
太火合相对分月亮。
We've got Saturn in the 7th, square the moon.
土星在西宫四分月亮。
We've got Uranus in the 1st house, Mr. Surprise, square the moon.
那么那个天王星在一宫，它四分了月亮。
And they're all aspecting each other very closely.
所有这些都紧密的和彼此形成相位。
And here's what she told me.
他是这么告诉我的。
She said, "Have you heard in the news about what's happening with this Bernie Madoff fella?"
他问我，你有没有听说过这个 Bernie 麦道夫这个人呢？
And how he has apparently stolen billions of dollars from investors?
他怎么样从他的投资者那里面就是骗取了10几亿的美元呢？
And I said, "Yeah."
我说是啊，我听到了。
Why?
为什么呢？
Well, she said, my now ex-husband and his whole family had invested everything with this man.
然后他对我说，我的前夫还有他的家人把他们所有的财产都投资给了这个麦道夫人。
And they have now lost all of it.
那么他们现在就是说 说所有的这样都付之一炬了，都没有了，排场化了灰烬了。
She said, I just got off the phone with my sister-in-law, his sister, begging me for money because they don't have any.
刚才我的那个她的那丈夫的妯娌是吧？应该说。
She said,
嫂子。
if I had not taken your advice and gone ahead and signed the agreement in September, I would have nothing.
他的嫂子问他借钱，因为他嫂子也没有钱了。然后他说，如果我没有这个女士说，如果我没有听你的建议，赶紧就是跟他签订这个离婚协议的话，现在我也是啥也没有了。
Now, needless to say, she will be a client the rest of my life.
不用说，他一辈子都会是我的客户了。
She had already been a client of mine for a long time.
他本来他很长时间是我的就是一个长期客户。
But every now and then in your practice, you will have every now and then it's like this.
但是在你们的实践中，你们的职业生涯中，你们可能会时不时的就有类似的这样的经历。
Where there can be dramatic results of this kind in an obvious way where you've helped your client.
你可能会有一种非常戏剧化的这样的方式，能够去帮助你的客户。
And this is an absolutely true story, and she would testify to it in court.
这是一个完全真实的故事。
Okay.
他愿意在法庭上证明这个事情。
So I think you would like. I just figured you would like this.
我想你可能会喜欢。
Okay. I mean, sure, if you compare this back to her natal chart.
如果你们看一下她的本命盘的话。
You know, let's just do some basic things. I got to go all the way back because we had two charts here. Yeah, I know, but we've got a lot of charts to cover and a certain limited amount of time to do it. If we look at the natal chart, we know that she was born with a lot of 8th house issues anyway.
如果是我们看到她本命盘的话呢，我们知道她本身有很多8宫的议题。
But you can see, let's go back and compare these. Look at these angles here. Notice, if we're just looking for stuff that's angular, notice that the midheaven in her chart is 2047 Virgo, and the 4th is 20 Pisces. And if we go back and look, you can see how that meridian is strongly aspected, because we got Saturn at 21, Uranus at 18, Mars and the Sun square that, and the Moon. So this mutable cross, which is what you got here, is a mutable cross in this full moon lunar return chart, hits the angle in that natal chart.
所以说你们看一下那个本命盘出生盘的那个轴点哈，那是21度吧，20度。
Which again,
这样一个，而在月亮反照盘的这个大十字，它们正好击中了它的出生图的中天和下中天。
Yeah, which is a shocking thing.
这是一个令人震惊的事情。
Look at that in terms of family and the status quo. The children have lost a good bit of their inheritance.
就他的家庭和家人来说，他的孩子们也失去了他们本来可以继承的遗产。
This was the biggest.
失去了一部分。
This was the biggest single investor ripoff in terms of one investment firm in the history of the United States.
这是美国历史上最大的一起就是麦道夫的这个金融诈骗案。
Yes, the terrible pun in the U.S. at that time was that he had made off with their money. That was his name, Madoff.
那个在美国呢有一个歇后语，因为这个人叫 Madoff， 所以说呢，我们就说他就是
Madoff.
Madoff
means he's taken off with their money.
他把他们的钱都骗走了，用 Madoff 就这个词。
Okay, all right. And again, you can go back and you can compare this natal chart to both of these lunar returns and you'll see a lot of connections that will provide clues for you about what developed.
那么你们也可以回去把这2张月亮反照图和它的本命盘对比一下，
Now, for the sake of symbolism and meaning, I want you to think about something.
我希望你们去思考一下这个议题，特别是就是为了你们更深的理解，我们这些象征符号的意义。
Look at this lunar return chart for December.
你看一下这12月份的这张月亮环照图。
Imagine what you would be thinking if she was still married and had not gotten the divorce finalized.
你想想，如果他没有把这个离婚这个官司给打完，他当时还是在婚姻中，会发生什么
？What would this chart mean then?
那么这张图那时候会意味着什么呢
Then it takes on its full negative potential, doesn't it?
这样的话呢，这张图实际上就把它的所有的负面的意义都表达了出来。如果是他没有离婚的话，这张图所表现的就完全全是负面的了。
Saturn is square the moon, Mars is opposite the moon, Uranus is square the moon, the sun is opposite the moon.
就是土星四分月亮，天王星四分月亮，火星对分月亮，太阳对分月亮。
You know, and her shock would have been that she has no money.
那么给她带来的震惊就是她一分钱都没了。
That her husband's money was all gone.
她丈夫的钱也都全没了。
Yeah, and again, this is working with a lunar return. Okay.
这就是月亮反照图的。功效.
All right, so just wanting you to see that. You can notice other things. For example, you might think, well, gee, this turned out kind of nicely for her, didn't it?
但是你可能会说，但是实际上这个它还不错啊，最后发生的这个状况。
Which is true.
确实也是。
But it didn't have to.
但是不一定就是一定会是个好结果。
It sure could have gone the other way.
当然可能会有另外一个结果。
You know, you can look at her natal chart.
而且你可以看一下她的本命盘。
And see that she's got the sun in the 8th house, but notice.
你看到她的太阳在第8宫。
Notice that, oops, I don't know how that happened. I went too far the other way. But notice that Jupiter in this December chart, it falls in her natal second opposite the sun within 2 degrees.
你看这个月亮反照盘的木星，它会正好是落在它的第2宫，它的本命图的第2宫，正好对冲它本命盘的月亮，它太阳本命图的太阳。
And that's not that big a deal.
这当然也不是一个大事儿。
But it's more symbolism to support the fact that she ended up having rather than not having.
不过呢，它结果呢就反映出它最后是有了这个钱，而不是说没有那个钱了。
Jupiter is trine Saturn over in the 7th there. See?
木星3分了土星。
And this falls in her natal second house. So these are what I call secondary considerations, you know, just other things to think about.
木星呢落在它本命出生图的第2宫，那么我说这些是你第2步呢，你考虑这些东西啊。
Okay, so I see some comments or questions over here. What are these?
First is they ask how the orbs of lunar return chart.
I would say don't get hung up on orbs. Use the same as you do in a natal chart.
那么就是说你用本命盘的这个容许度就好了。
Okay, and just remember the same thing you know in the natal chart. The closer the aspect, the more significant it is.
就像本命盘一样，相位越紧密呢，那它就会越重要。
See, these basic rules that I hammered at you when we were talking about natal charts, these basic rules will serve you well with every chart you look at.
就是我一直给大家灌输的这个出生图的这些基本的准则，不论你看什么图，它们都是适用的。
You will know better than almost anybody in astrology that those who haven't taken these courses here at Nodor, you will know more than almost anybody else.
跟那些没有在落道上课的人相比呢，如果你们真的是学好基础的话，你会比他们所知道的都会多得多。
You will be able to look at a chart and quickly recognize what's important.
你可以迅速的看一张图，然后马上的看到到底什么是最重要的。
Because you will look at the lunar nodes, and you will look at the angles, and you will look at close aspects.
因为你们要去看南北焦点，你们要去看4轴，你们要去看最紧密的相位。
And you will have important things to say to people.
你们可以跟客户说一些比较重要的事情。
that can help them with their lives.
这些可以很有效的帮助他们的人生。
Okay, you'll know how to do it. So.
你们要知道如何做到。
Okay, what's the other question?
Even in the lunar return chart of moon, why it related to money? Is that because it's related to Scorpio?
I would say that if you had just shown me this lunar return by itself, I don't know, I could have guessed that it had, I'm not sure I could have guessed that it had to do with money.
我说如果是你仅仅把这个月亮反照让我看的话呢，我觉得我也看出来它是跟钱相关。
What I would have noticed was the high stress pattern of the chart.
我能够注意到的是这个星图上的这个高度紧张的这样一个模式。
I would have seen that it must be some kind of dramatic development.
我认为可能有一些非常戏剧化的他们这样一个发展。
I would have noticed that it had to do with partnership.
我会注意到这和伴侣关系相关。
Family.
家庭。
Possibly property.
可能和房产。
Status out in the world and career.
职业还有他的社会地位。
In some level of either personal chaos or somebody was in the middle of reinventing their life.
另外呢，还有一定程度上的个人的这种混乱的状况，或者是有一个人他在重新创造自己的人生。
Oh, and look at this. Just to add to it, Pluto's conjunct Mercury, getting some very intense news.
你看看，还有水星合相的冥王星，他确实得到了一些非常激烈的这样的消息。
Okay, so those are things that would have got my attention. It's true, I might have looked at Mars up here on the midheaven, so closely aspected, and said, gee, Mars is the ruler of the second house, and maybe some consideration of money might have been on my list, but it wouldn't have been at the top of my list.
当然我会也看到紧密合相中间的一个火星，我也注意到火星是2宫的守护星，那我可能会想到这个可能跟金钱相关，不过呢这一点不会在我的最主要的这样的考虑之中。
My main thinking would have been that something was going to significantly impact marriage and family.
那么我主要的考虑就是说有一些非常重要的事情会发生，影响了他的婚姻和家庭。
And that somehow it might even have to do with the public or something high profile.
可能这个事情呢还和能够就是说一些就是在公众面前大家都知道的事情相关。
And in fact, it was a very high profile case.
实际上呢，这确实一个是众所周知的这样一个事件。
More people who were rich on one day were poor the next. Than I can even imagine when. I mean, people lost their yachts and boats and houses just overnight.
就是世界上有更多的这样富人一夜之间变成了穷人，很多人他们的游艇啊，他们的就是这个别墅啊，一夜之间就是都消失了。
Okay, another question over here. Is it a good question?
When during the shocking news, what happened to her?
She was fine.
她一切都还好呀。
And she was concerned about her ex, even though he was already with another woman.
当然
a girlfriend.
她也会关心她的前夫，这个前夫已经跟另外一个女性在一起了，有了女朋友。
She was concerned about how she should respond to her ex-sister-in-law who wanted some money.
她也是想她如何对她这个她前夫的姐姐，她应该怎么样回应，因为那个姐姐想向她借钱。
So she had some anxiety about that. What should I do?
所以说
should I help? Can I really afford to help?
所以说她有一些焦虑。她会说我该怎么做呢？我应不应该帮助他们呢？我能帮助得起吗？
Because she had to think about her own security. She had cut this divorce deal to give her enough money to support a family of 3 kids.
因为她还想一想她自己的责任，她这个离婚官司完了，她毕竟还有3个孩子要抚养呢。
One who was in college and another one about to go to college.
一个孩子在上大学，另外一个孩子要去上大学了，马上就准备上大学了。
It's as expensive, so she had to
还是
think
很
about
贵
that.
的， 这些费用都很贵的，所以说他还有这些家庭责任。
She was not keen on giving out money gained by it.
所以说他真的其实不想把钱借给任何人。
She thought of her own security and the security of her family.
他更多的想他自己的安全，还有他的家人的安全。
Mainly, she was in shock, so I would describe her emotional state as one of shock.
那么他当那个月他主要的这个情绪状态就是震惊。
Almost like someone who had decided at the last minute not to get on an airplane and the airplane had crashed. It was kind of like that.
这种震惊就像有一个人他最后1分钟决定不上飞机了，结果那个飞机呢就失事了。大概就是这种状况。
And so, we talked about it, and just I remember that conversation fairly well, even though it was, 8 years ago or 7 years ago.
我们也谈了谈，我当时也非常的清晰的记得那次谈话，虽然这是7、8年之前发生的事情了。
Okay, she's a great client. She's also, by the way, a famous artist. She's a great artist.
她是一个很棒的客户，同时她也是一个很棒的艺术家。
And she does this photographic art that's become won all these awards over the last 7 years. She's been very happily divorced.
她这个离婚离得很 happy。她成了一个还是挺成功的艺术家，她做的是那个摄影艺术，而且还赢得了一项大奖。
So she emerged out of this Uranus square the moon a new woman.
所以说，当天王星4分她月亮的时候呢，她成了一个新的女性。
Established security for her family and went on to create a new and better life for herself.
她一方面为自己的家人建立起来了这样的更多的安全感，另外呢，也为她自己创建了一个新的世界。
Okay. Of course, life doesn't always work that way.
当然，人生并不是总是这样的。
Here is an interesting chart. This is the natal chart of a longtime client of mine.
下面呢也是一个非常有趣的星图，这也是我的一个长期客户的星图。
This is one of the clients. I'll mention this even though it doesn't have anything to do with this particular lunar return. This is one of the clients whose life I'm credited with saving by her and her husband. Her and her husband credit me with saving her life.
那么这个客户和她的丈夫呢，把他们就是说我救了他们的命。
When she married, I know her because she married a long-term client of mine.
我认识她是因为她和我的一个长期客户结了婚。
And he had been a client of mine since like 70s,
那位男性呢，在70年代就是我的客户了。
Anyway, it was the third marriage for him and the second marriage for her, so it was later in life. They were, in their 50s when they got married.
那么这个婚姻呢，是那个男士的第3次婚姻，女士的第2次婚姻。他们等于是在50多岁，又重新结合的这样一对夫妻。
So I noticed something. I'll tell you the story briefly. I noticed that she had a Sun-Saturn square.
我注意到这位女性有个太土4分相。
And so I asked a very normal question. I said, is there any incidence of heart trouble in your family?
所以说我问她一个很正常的问题，我问她你家里人有没有心脏方面的问题？
It's a very basic astrology question. Saturn is in the 6th house, square the sun in the 8th. Well, the sun's almost the 9th, but still Sun Saturn.
那么这是一个占星学最基础的一个知识。土星在第6宫4分了在第8宫的太阳，当然这个太阳就有点到第9宫去了。
And she said, yes, in my father's family, my father died early of a heart attack.
她说是的，在我父亲的家族里面，我父亲很早就死于心脏病。
Well, she had at the time a Saturn transit approaching that would have triggered the Sun-Saturn square.
当时呢，正好那段时期行进的土星会触发这个太土4分相。
And to make a long story short, I encouraged her and encouraged her husband to go in to Emory, to the hospital, to the doctors, and get checked out. So I encouraged her husband to take her in because they were talking about it. I said, I think you ought to take her in and get her checked out before this transit comes along.
就是说长话短说，我就当时就鼓励她的丈夫带她在这个行进发生之前，带她赶紧去医院检查一下。
And in fact, they found a problem that that nobody knew about with her.
那么他们真的是发现了她身体的一个问题， 当时没有人发现这个问题。
And the doctors told her and her husband, it's a good thing you came in now, or this thing could have killed you within the next few months.
那么他的这个医生对他说，你现在来真是太好了，如果是你现在不来，几个月后，这个你可能就会死于心脏病。
So anyway, this is, another just example of how you can help your clients with some common sense astrology, even though that's not about the lunar return that we're about to look at.
那么这也是我说的一个就是说常见的，你可以帮助你的客户的一个事例啊。不过这个不是我们今天要谈的话题，我们要看的是另外一个月亮反照图。
Now, her daughter was born with a heart problem.
她的女儿出生的时候也有心脏问题。
But a heart problem unrelated to the heart problem that was discovered that she had.
但是呢，她女儿的心脏病的问题呢，和就是这位女士的心脏病问题好像是没有关系。
But still a heart problem.
但是呢，她确实还是有一个心脏问题。
And if I had the daughter's chart here, which I should have put here, you would also see a Sun-Saturn square, by the way.
如果是我要是我应该把她的女儿的星图放上来就好了，因为你也可以看到女儿的星图上有一个太极四分相。
But right now we're just looking at my client's chart, who is the mother of this daughter.
不过呢，现在我们看一看我的客户的这个星图，它是。
Okay, and and her daughter went on to have, for a while, a very normal life.
她的女儿呢，很长时间来过的都是一个很正常的生活。
And married and had 3 kids.
她的女儿结婚了，而且有3个孩子。
And took good care of herself.
她把自己也照顾得蛮好。
But she did have real heart problems, again from birth.
但是她从出生就有心脏问题，心脏病。
And it would be in late May of 2010.
在2010年的5月末。
Her daughter would suddenly drop dead of a heart attack.
她的女儿突然心脏病发就去世了。
Now, this is my client's chart, and I just want you to see this.
这是我客户的星图，我希望你们看一下。This is a male?
No.
This is a woman?
This is a woman.
What's the chart?
That's the mother. This is the natal chart, and this is my client. This is my client.
Yes.
Okay. Her daughter was born with a heart trouble. Okay.
This is a client chart.
This is my client's chart.
Okay.
A female. Okay.
The next chart is her daughter's chart.
No. The next chart is the lunar return of my client.
Okay.
The next chart is the lunar return of my client for the month that her daughter died.
这个是她女儿去世的那个月的月亮反照图。
And so, if you were looking at a particular time frame, such as this month,
如果你看一个特定的一个月啊，比如说我们看这个月。
And you saw that the moon, I want you to see how tight this is. We have Uranus conjunct the 8th house cusp. Okay? See how close that is? Right on it. Square the moon. Saturn opposite Uranus, Saturn square the moon. Look at that. 28, 29, 29.
我希望大家看一看这个项目中的紧密啊，在这张月亮反照图上，月亮4分天王星，4分土星。
And so this was the shock and the emotional blow represented in the lunar return chart.
这就是在月亮反照图上所代表的那个震惊，还有这个情绪上的崩溃。
It also meant that now my client would have to play a role with her daughter's 3 children, meaning her 3 grandchildren.
这也意味着现在我的客户呢，需要在他的3个孙子孙女就为他们承担责任了，也要承担。
And even though my client knew that someday this might happen with her daughter, it happened faster or earlier than she had imagined it would.
即便是我的客户意识到有一天他的女儿可能会心脏病发，但是这个事情呢，还是比他想象的来得早。
So as you can understand, during this month, I spent some time counseling my client and being there for my client and dealing with her dealing with the shock of this event.
你们也可以想象到，在这个月呢，我也会跟我这个客户在一起，花了一些时间来陪伴他度过这个震惊的时光。
What had made it even more shocking was that just a couple of weeks before her daughter died, her daughter had come to her and said, Mom, I want to divorce my husband.
那么更让他震惊的是，就在他女儿去世的前几天，他女儿来找他，跟他讲，他说妈，我想跟我丈夫离婚。
He doesn't know it yet.
那么，但是那个男士还不知道他想离婚。
But I'm going to do it.
但是呢，我就会去离婚。
And then she died before she told him.
但是他的女儿在告诉自己的丈夫想离婚之前，就突然去世了。
And my client decided she would never let her husband know that.
我的客户决定呢，她永远不会让她的丈夫知道，就是她女儿的丈夫知道，她女儿有这样的想法。
But it is interesting because the daughter was trying to liberate herself.
但是也很有趣，这个女儿想去解放自己。
But her liberation came a different way.
但是她的解放是以不同的方式实现的。
Okay? Okay. All right.
讲解放的时候。
Yes. What?
The liberation.
Yeah.
That out the liberation.
I had that back in the 80s. I had a Sagittarius client with Uranus, transiting Uranus conjunct his sun.
那个丹瑞老师说，在80年代呢，我有一个射手座的客户，那么当时呢，行进的天王星合向了他的太阳。
He had been recently divorced.
他刚刚离婚。
He was very happy.
他很开心。
And he came and got a session with me.
他来跟我我们做咨询。
All excited talking about the new life he was going to make for himself.
他兴奋地谈到他要为自己就是开创一个新的生活。
Transiting Uranus in Sagittarius was conjunct his natal sun in Sagittarius.
就是天王星射手座的天王星合向了他本命的在射手座的太阳。
Within just a few months after that,
在几个月之后。
He was out cleaning the gutters 2 stories up on his house. The gutters where there is a thing on the side of the house that the rain comes in, and he was up there cleaning it.
就是他爬到他那个房子上面，就是2层房子上面去清洗那个房檐。
And apparently some bees were up there, like hornets or bees came out and came at him. Some bees. And he fell off the ladder and fell on his head. It killed him.
然后呢，就是那个房檐上面有一个马蜂窝，那个马蜂就袭击了他，然后呢，他就一头就是因为他在2层楼上呢，他就是摔了下来，就过世了。
Now, the reason that I knew about this, of course, is that his brother brought me the tape of our session.
那么这个他的弟弟呢，把我和他做的咨询呢，这个磁带带了过来。
And he said to me several interesting things.
那么他弟弟呢跟我说了一些非常有趣的事情。
First, he said, I need to tell you my brother has died.
首先他的弟弟跟我讲说，我想告诉你，我哥去世了。
And I have listened to the tape you did for him. This is back in the days of tapes before you had CDs and stuff.
那我听了你跟他做的这个录音的磁带，那个时候还没有 CD， 还只有录音磁带。
He said nowhere on the tape did either of you talk about death or dying.
没有人在这个磁带上面讲生死。
But I have to tell you that listening to this tape meant a lot to me.
但是我想告诉你，重新回听这个磁带对我来说意味着很多。
I felt like I learned more about my brother.
我感觉到我好像更多的了解了我的兄弟。
I'd never heard him be so excited about his new life.
我从来没有听他说过他对他的新生活那么的兴奋。
And you did warn him to be careful on the exact days that he fell off that ladder.
你确实警告了他，就是在他接下那个梯子的就是警告了他接下梯子的那一天，让他注意那一天。
So sometimes as an astrologer, you're going to have that kind of experience too.
所以说，作为占星师呢，有时候你也会有这样的经历。
Okay. All right. Here's another chart.
那么我们来看另外一张星图。
What?
Okay. No.
This is another good client. All these are good clients of mine. This one actually is a student of mine too.
这是另外一个非常好的客户，这个客户呢也是我的一个学生。
He now practices astrology.
他现在也是一个占星师了。
Okay. Anyway, this is the natal chart.
这是他的出生图。
I think you can understand that he might practice astrology. He's got Aquarius rising and some Aquarius influence, and he's got Mercury on the descending. He's a very good counselor.
那么他这样从呢，你可能也会猜想到他就是做一个占星师也是有道理的。他的上升和北焦点都在水瓶座，他的水晶在下降点，是一个很好的提神师。
He's particularly good at doing workshops for upper management and executives. Look at this moon in Capricorn in the 12th house.
他特别善于为那个高层管理人员做工作坊。
So he's found a way to use astrology to help as a kind of coaching tool for management in corporate America.
你看他的月亮在摩羯座12宫，所以说他掌握了这种方式，用占星为那个美国的公司的高管做培训。做一个具体的教练，做教练技术。
However, let's take a look at the lunar chart listed below. If I can get to it here, here we go.
不过呢，我们看一看，它的月亮反照盘吧。
Okay. This very simple one.
这是一个非常简单的月亮反照盘。
Okay. He was during this month going through some career changes with the company he was with. He was wanting to break off and do more astrology. He was having anxiety about whether he should leave a company or not.
就在这个月呢，他有点想跟这个公司分手，他想去真正的开始他的占星咨询生涯。
However, the main thing that was going on, of course, is that his wife was very pregnant.
那么他当时也很多的焦虑。不过呢，最重要的当时的事情，他的妻子怀孕了。
And this became the month that his first child, a son, was born.
这是他的孩子第一个儿子出生的那一个月。
Now, these planets are not in the 4th house; they're in the 3rd.
你看这些行星并不在第4宫，它在第3宫。
But what I want you to notice is the tight conjunctions to the moon here.
但是我希望你们看到这个月亮周围的这个紧密的合相。
The moon and sun and Venus are all tightly conjunct within 1 degree.
月亮、太阳、金星紧密合相在1度之内。
Okay, and of course, the child is the sun, so we have the sun here, and we have an angular Mars. I find that interesting. I don't know if that's the case all the time, but
非常有趣的是，火星是在中间，这是一个男孩。
So what I'm trying to show you here is a different example of how the moon can be another way that the moon can be emphasized when something important might happen in a particular month.
这是我想向你们展示，如果是一个月可能有重要的事情发生的，它的月亮的另外一个可能的显示，就是可能的状况是什么样子。
Now, this is an easy one to predict. The wife is obviously 8 months pregnant before this chart goes into effect. We know about when the baby is going to be born.
这个图比较好预测，因为在我们看这个月亮反照盘之前，我们已经知道这个太太已经怀孕8个月了。
Okay, does anybody have any questions over here?
But previous chat, how can you see things drop that month?
I don't know that had I done the lunar return chart beforehand, which I didn't. I did it after the fact. I didn't do it before the fact.
老师说呢，他也不知道，实际上他并不是就是在他去世之前做的这张反照图，他做这张呢是他知道他已经过世之后。
Right. So I did not predict an accident or death or anything for her daughter that month. I did not predict this.
所以说呢，他并没有那个预测，就是这个客户的女儿会那个月去世。
I only did this lunar return chart after the daughter had died.
只是在这个女儿已经过世之后，才做的这张月亮反照图。
Because I wanted to see what it looked like.
因为想看一看那个月的月亮反照到底是什么样子。
There was a little bit of concern of had she actually said anything to her husband, and had there been trouble, or had he done something to bring this on? In other words, had she come to her husband and said, "I want to divorce you," and he flew off the handle and did something.
可能更多的考虑她有没有去见她的丈夫，跟她丈夫说，要离婚这个事情。
They did have an autopsy on the body. An autopsy. Do you know what that is? It's when the medical examiner examines the body to see the cause of death.
他们确实是做了一个尸体解剖去看看这个到底什么造成了他的死亡。
Because there was a little bit of concern. You can see the sun in this chart. Oops. The sun in this chart is square Neptune.
因为呢，你看到这个图上太阳四分了海王星。
So the husband obviously knows his wife has a bad heart.
所以说这个丈夫呢是知道他的太太心脏不好。
Did he put some kind of drug or medicine or something in her drink or food to cause a heart attack?
所以说呢，这个丈夫是不是在他的食物或者是饮料里面放了一些东西，可能会造成他的心脏病发呢？有这样的怀疑。
My client asked me this question.
我的客户也问了我这个问题。
I said, I don't know. I said, but I would at least do the autopsy and see if there's any evidence of a problem.
我说我真的不知道，不过呢，至少我会去做一下尸体解剖，看看是不是有这样的可能性。
And they did, and there was no evidence of any foul play. No evidence of anything.
他们确实做了尸体解剖，但是呢，没有找到任何证据。
Where's the eraser? Here it is. Okay. Just want to erase that so they can see. It's better up here. Okay, there we go. All right. What other question was there?
No.
Okay, yeah. Again, predicting death is not something, even though you will talk about it with clients sometimes, is a very tricky thing.
虽然有时候你可能会跟你的客户谈论关于死亡的事情，但是这个确实是很不寻常的。
Because you're going to have clients that come to you with terminal illnesses.
因为你可能会有一些他们有一个就是说非常严重的疾病，就是在他们晚期疾病的这些人来找你做咨询。
And you're going to have conversations with some clients about death. It's going to happen.
你会跟一些人谈论死亡的问题，这个会有这样的事情的。
And you need to stay very honest.
你需要非常的诚实。
Which is that astrology is not an absolute predictor of when someone's going to die.
你要告诉他们，占星学不能准确的告诉一个人他什么时候会死。
In some cases, astrology can be an additional indicator that can help you know where there's a higher probability, but that's only in some situations.
不过在某种情况下呢，占星学可以帮助你在哪个时期可能会有这样的可能性。
When my father had terminal cancer, I could look ahead and estimate astrologically when I thought he would die.
当我父亲有晚期癌症的时候呢，我就看了看，预测了一下他什么时候可能会过世。
But he had already been diagnosed with terminal cancer.
但是那个时候呢，他其实已经
Stage 4.
已经被诊断出患了晚期癌症了。
Okay. And he had Pluto opposing the sun by transit.
他的女王星对生了太阳。
And he died when Mars was triggering the sun Pluto.
当火星触发了女太对生相的时候，他过世了。
And I was right there with him when he died. I had predicted the few days that I thought he would die.
就是当他过世的时候，我在他身边，因为我当时预测了。
And in cases like that in your own family, it can be helpful.
在这样的案例里面，这可能是很有益的。
But this is not a subject that you should ever make claims about to clients.
但是这个议题，你绝对不要向你的客户说，这个占星学能做死亡上的预测。
Most of the codes of ethics that you sign as an astrologer in the United States prohibit you from making predictions about death or dying.
大部分你如果在美国的话，你所签署的这个道德，就是说这个道德准则的话呢，它会禁止你去预测客户的死亡。
But you will have, it's going to be normal, it's going to come up in discussion, you just got to stay honest.
但是呢，这也很正常，会有这样的咨询发生的，你只要诚实就好了。
Because you can be surprised.
因为呢，肯定会有一些让你惊讶的事情发生。
Like 1985, I had a client who had bone cancer and was given 6 months to live.
比如说在1985年，我有一个客户，他患了骨癌，医生预测他只有6个月可活了。
She had a very stressful forecast in terms of transits and progression.
当时他的行进和二次线都非常的激烈和紧张。
She thought she was going to die.
他觉得他要死了。
She was pretty sure of it.
他甚至确信无疑。
So I thought probably so.
所以说我觉得也可能他就要死了。
So we talked about it.
然后我们就聊了聊。
And what she wanted to do and how to put her affairs in order.
我们就跟他聊了聊，他应该做些什么呀？怎么样把他的之后的这个都弄得井井有条啊？
Her cancer went away.
但他的骨癌不见了。
Nobody knew why.
没有人知道为什么。
She lived 7 more years.
他也多活了7年。
So sometimes you'll get surprised that way too.
所以有时候呢，你会有一些惊讶的，你会有一些惊讶的。
The doctor thought she was going to die. She thought she was going to die, and I thought she probably was too.
医生说他要死了，他认为他要死了，我也觉得他要死了。
But she lived 7 more years.
但是他又多活了7年。
Okay. Which thing? Oh yeah. Well, those of you, we have in our advanced studies program, as some of you know, we have astrologer and therapist Hattie Fitzgerald.
另外呢，大家可能不太知道，不知道大家知道不知道，我们另外一个占星师哈德利老师
teaching a course for us to really help people become better counselors and therapists.
他现在在为沃道教一门课程，就帮助我们的学生成为更好的咨询师和疗愈师。
And last weekend she talked about her experience with her own father.
在上周末呢，他谈了谈他和他父亲的这样他的经历。
And when she was early in astrology, her own experience with predicting her father's death.
在他刚刚学占星不久，他就是预测他父亲的死亡日期的这样一个故事。
She very carefully did all the transits and progressions and solar arc.
他非常小心谨慎的做了所有的行进、二次线、太阳弧。
Because her father had a bad heart, and it had recently had a very bad heart attack.
因为他的父亲心脏出了问题，而且就在他预测之前呢，就有一次心脏病发。
And she predicted with her calculations that he would die like in late June, like June 29th or 30th or something like that.
那么他自己预测他的父亲可能在那一年的6月份，6月末去世。
And then the 29th, 30th came along, and he didn't die. He was okay.
6月29、30号呢，他自己没去世呢，还没死。
And she thought, well, make good. Maybe I was wrong.
他想，好吧，可能我预测错了。
And then 3 days later, he died.
那3天之后，他的父亲过世了。
So her forecast was only off by 3 days.
所以他的预测呢，只是错了3天。
But what she hadn't realized at the time, because she was very young as an astrologer and as a therapist.
但是他当时没有意识到，因为他当时还很年轻。
Was
作为
that
占星师和作为疗愈师还很年轻。
she was using the astrology to give her also as a defense, to give her some sense of control over the process.
当时他用占星学做了一个防御机制，让他感觉到他可以控制整个的过程。
Trying to protect herself from the scary experience of losing her father. She loved her father very much.
因为他非常爱他的父亲，所以说他用占星学呢做了一个防御机制，想保护他，不去经历那个就是这种可怕的要失去父亲的这种。
And she talked this weekend. She talked very movingly about what happened.
他非常动情的讲到发生的事情。
She said that when he died, that she handled it really well.
他说，当他父亲过世的时候呢，他应对的非常好。
And that everybody in the family kept telling her how well she was doing.
所有的家人都告诉他，不断的说，哎呀，你真棒，你做的真棒。
She had cried some, but God had gotten on with her life.
他也哭了，但是呢，他继续他的生活。
And then her dog had died within a few months.
然后呢，过了几个月，他的狗就也死了。
a dog that she loved very much.
他的狗，这条狗他也特别的爱。
And she cried a little, but she got on with her life.
然后他也哭了一阵，但是他又继续接着过自己的生
And
活。
everybody in her family told her how strong she was and how amazing it was that she was doing so well.
他家所有家人都说，哎呀，他有多坚强啊，他多棒啊，他应对的非常好。
But eventually her emotions that she was not dealing with caught up with her.
但是呢，最终他没有去应对的这种情绪，逮住了他。
And as she told everybody, it took her 7 years to process her grief over the loss of her father.
他告诉我们所有人，他花了7年去消化失去父亲的悲伤。
The point she was making is don't use astrology to protect you from an experience.
他所讲的这个例子的意义在于，不要用占星学去保护你不去经历那些事情。
Life is meant to be experienced, people. That's why we are here.
人生就是要去经验的，这是为什么我们在这儿的原因。
Otherwise, you just stay on the other side and watch, like watching television.
不然的话，你就像看电影一样，看电视一样，你就在那儿观看。
Okay? You came here to experience life, experience it.
你来到这个地球上就是为了体验这个人生，那你就要去尽情的体验。
Use astrology to help you understand what's going on.
要运用占星去理解现在所发生的一切。
Use astrology to open up the meaning of life.
要运用占星学去向生命的意义敞开。
Don't use it to give you a false sense of control.
不要用占星学给你一种虚假的这样一种感觉，好像你可以控制什么似的。
Because being an astrologer is not going to give you any more control over life than anything else.
因为作为一个占星师，也不会给你更多的控制权，对人生更多的控制权。
But it will help you in becoming more aware and of gaining more meaning and understanding.
但是它可以帮助你更意识到，然后能够得到更多的意义和理解，对这发生的一切得到更多的理解。
So that's Hadley made the point much better than I am.
他所表述的比我表述的好得多。
We're lucky to have her as a new faculty member here.
我们非常幸运，他作为我们做到的一个老师。
Okay, so let's go on.
我们再往下看。
All right, we're near the end tonight.
我们马上就今晚的课程就要结束了。
I think you've seen the chart of Barack Obama before.
我想你们以前看过奥巴马的星图。
Well, this is kind of fun because I added a chart to the course material for tonight's lesson.
这个也很有趣，因为我为今晚的这个课呢增加了一张星图。
All of you know Barack's chart probably and realize he's what I call the new Leo.
那个所有的人都知道奥巴马的星图，我称奥巴马是一个新的狮子座。
Why do I call him a new Leo?
我为什么称他是一个新的狮子座呢？
Because he has the North Node in Leo and the Sun in Leo.
因为他的北焦点在狮子座，太阳也在狮子座。
Okay, which means he's learning how to be a Leo.
这就意味着他在学习如何成为一个狮子座。
And he's got some Leo stuff to help him with that.
他还有一些狮子座的东西能够帮助他。
All right, sometimes he's a leader, sometimes he's detached.
有时候他是个领袖，有时候呢他非常的抽离。
Sometimes he wishes he was still a community organizer.
有时候他可能还希望自己还是一个社区的组织者就好了。
That's a much more comfortable role for Aquarius.
那对于一个水瓶座的来说是一个更舒服的一个角色。
You know? But he fluctuates between objective, intellectual view of things, objective intellectual view.
但是他会在两者之间摇摆，有时候他是一个非常客观的、一个非常聪明的这样一个观察者。
To being a dramatic and significant leader.
那另外一段时候呢，他是一个非常戏剧化的一个领袖。
His critics will criticize him at both sides of this polarity.
对他的批评呢，也批评了他这两方面的个性。
His critics will say, when he's in Leo mode, they'll say he's arrogant.
所以当他在 视作的状态下的时候呢，那些批评他的人就说他特别的傲慢。
When he's in his Aquarius mode, his critics will say he's too detached.
当他在水瓶座的这一级的时候呢，那些批评家们就说，他太抽离了。
If you were to look this up on the internet, you could see this criticism going from one polarity. He's arrogant, he's detached. This has been said thousands of times.
如果是你在那个网络上面看关于对他的批评，你可以看到这两个极端的这样的批评。就是这种批评的，就类似的话说了几千次了。
And of course, both are true, aren't they?
当然，这两者都是正确的。
All right, let's take a look at something here.
让我们看看下面这个星图吧。
This lunar return chart is for the lunar return period after his first election, because he was elected president in early November of 2008.
那么这是在他当选总统就选举完过后的那个月亮反照图，因为他是在11月初就当选了总统。
So I'm just wanting you to see what is suggested here.
我希望大家看一下这里面反映出了什么。
Remember what your priorities are.
要记得你们的重点是什么，就优先次序，解读的优先次序是什么。
It is a lunar return chart, so you look at the moon and you look at close aspects to the moon, etc.
这是个月亮反照图，所以你要看一下月亮，你看看月亮的紧密相位。
But in this lunar return chart, the moon is not really that dramatically aspected.
但是这张月亮反照图上呢，月亮并没有特别戏剧化的相位。
You've got a quincunx to Venus over here.
这个月亮呢和金星形成了一个梅花相位。
That's not that big a deal.
这也不是一个什么大事儿。
You know, but what grabs your attention is that Uranus is on the angle right here, opposite Saturn.
但是引起大家注意的是，天王星那个在轴点的天王星对分土星。
And they're right on the angle.
而且天王星和土星都在轴点附近。
He's had a career change.
他的这个职业发生了变化。
We can see Jupiter is also involved in this because Jupiter's at 18, so it's sextile Uranus trine Saturn.
我们看到木星也在这个相位的之内，因为木星呢，它六分了天顶，那个3分了天顶。
But we can see there's something serious going on in terms of home and family.
我们可以说，就家庭来说，有一些非常严肃的事情在发生。
Okay, Saturn, fourth, his daughters has got to find a new school. He's moving to another city.
他的女儿要去找一个新的学校，他搬到一个新的城市。
They think this is a positive development. Saturn is trine Jupiter.
土星3分木星，他们认为这是一个很正向的这样一个发展。
And this career move is an opportunity.
而且这样一个职业上的一个进展呢，也是一个机会。
And it's pretty exciting, I suppose, being president.
当然了，作为一个总统，我猜想也是应该是令人兴奋的吧。
Now, I had not been able to find the lunar return chart during the month he was elected because I couldn't find out where he was during the lunar return that was in effect when he was elected. This is afterwards. What about the one?
但是这个是在他已经被选举总统之后的那个月亮反照图，但是因为我不知道他是在哪被他在选举时候他在哪个城市，所以说我没有找到就是他选举结果出来的时候那个月的太阳反照图。
Now notice after the election he's in Chicago.
你注意到在这个竞选之后呢，他是在芝加哥。
But I got crazy one day recently.
但是最近有一天呢，我就特别想知道到底在哪。
Which is anybody here, Notor will tell you, happens to me pretty regularly.
对，我有时候就会发一阵风，那么若到的人会告诉你们，我时不时就会抽风。
And I got on the internet determined to find out where he was, what city he was in, on the day of his lunar return before the election.
所以说呢，我就在那个网络上面要去查找，就是在这个竞选之前，他到底在哪儿？
And I not only found it, I found a video of the day.
我不仅找到了他在哪，我还找到了就是他那个有一个 video 有视频。
I had video evidence online of him in Kansas City, Missouri on October 17th, 2008 when he had his lunar return.
那么我有一个视频的证据啊，就在那个时候，就在那个 so when he was elected.
Yes, this is the lunar return in effect on November 4th. He's elected November 4th, which is within the 28 days.
他就是那个竞选，就是说那个投票是在10月4日，就是那天他当选总统的。那么这就是他当选总统影响他是否能够当选总统的那个月亮反照盘。
Because I had always assumed that the lunar return chart in effect on the day that on the month he was elected would be pretty significant.
因为我一直是猜想，在他当选的那个月的月亮反照图一定是非常显著的。
So I just screamed when I saw this one.
所以说，当我真的做出来这张图，看到这张图的时候，我就大叫了。
And I tried to get Felice's attention.
他大叫是因为想引起我的注意。
But she was busy.
很忙，没注意。
We all stay pretty busy around here, you know. And so the moon is on an angle.
所以说呢，你看月亮是在那个轴点上合轴了。
Which again makes it an important month. The moon's on an angle.
每当月亮合轴，这都是一个非常重要的月份。
In this case, you might think it had something to do with his marriage because it's on the descendant.
在这个情况下，你可能觉得这个可能跟他的婚姻有关系，因为这个月亮是在下降点。
But people, look, the same two planets are again on the meridian.
但是大家要看呢，同样的两颗行星又在那个中轴线上了。
So think about it. The lunar returns on either side of his election have Saturn and Uranus on the meridian.
所以说，你看这两张图上，在他竞选的这个月和竞选之后的这个月，土星和天王星都在他的这个中轴线上。
And the only place this could have happened was around the Kansas City, Missouri line.
而且是有这样一个月亮反照图的唯一的一个地方呢，就是只能发生在密苏里的 Kansas 城。
And look at this. Uranus is, of course, conjunct the IC exactly and opposing the MC exactly, 19, 19, 19.
你看看这个天王星紧密的对分了上中田和下中田，对分了土星。
Okay. And Saturn's on the slope. It looks like he's going to move, doesn't it?
那么土星在中间，天王星这天宇看起来他要搬家了。
And that there's a strong likelihood of some significant or important career development.
所以说呢，很可能有一些非常强的这个职业的这样的发展。
If an astrologer had looked at this and they might have thought, if they were thinking of Saturn negatively, oh look, he's not going to win.
如果一个占星师看这张月亮反照图，如果占星师对于土星就是总是想土星的负面意义的话呢，可能会觉得他赢不了了。
First off, a lunar return chart is not enough evidence alone to make you that cocky.
首先呢，我们刚看那个月亮反照盘可不能说出这样的奇怪的话。
And second, Saturn has a positive and negative side. You don't know which one's going to manifest.
另外一方面呢，土星有正向的意义，有负向的意义，你真的不知道这一个月土星会以什么样的意义表现出来。
The correct analysis would have been a very important serious development in terms of career.
那么正确的预测是，就职业来说，有一个非常重要的严肃的这样的一个进展状况。
Likely resulting in a significant move.
很可能它的结果是，它有一个很显著的这样一个进展。
And also a direct impact upon the status quo of his marriage.
而且这也会对他的婚姻的现状，会产生影响。
Okay? I just thought it was amazing to compare these two lunar returns on either side of his election. It's just really amazing.
所以说我觉得去比较一下，他的竞选中和竞选后的这个月的月亮反照盘，我觉得真的是非常的令人惊喜。
Both of them pick up. I just love the synchronicity of this.
这两个月亮反照图都是准确的 描述了当时的状况。我其实非常喜欢这样的。
Now let me tell you, let me add another piece of synchronicity to this, and we'll stop.
那么我再增加一点关于这张星图的共识性，然后我们就结束今天的课程。
A lot of astrologers felt that when Obama was running for president in 2008, that this Saturn-Uranus opposition symbolized his likelihood of winning.
很多占星师呢都感觉到，这个土天的对分相，标志着他可能会赢。
Because Uranus represents something that is new and different.
因为天王星代表着一些新的不同的事件。
Saturn represents the established order.
而土星意味着已经建立起来的这个秩序。
Here is Uranus, the planet of something new and change, opposing the planet of established order.
那么现在天王星代表着变化，和新的变化的这个天王星对分了，代表了秩序的土星。
Now him running for president alone was challenging the established order.
那么他去竞选总统，已经在挑战这些已经建立的秩序了。
But think about the fact that this opposition shows up on Barack Obama's meridian before and after the election. It's just amazing.
但是你想一想，这样一个土天对分相，在他的竞选前和竞选后的这样一个月，准确的在他的中轴线上表现了出来，是不是真的是非常令人惊叹的？
Right. So there we go. I want to mention one other thing to you. I want to mention one other thing to you. Speaking of videos.
另外呢，我还想再跟大家再介绍一下。
Today at Nodor we launched our video platform.
那么今天呢，我们就是把我们的这个视频课程上线了。
And we hope over the next few years to have all kinds of videos, astrology videos for you.
在未来几年，我们希望为大家推出更多的视频课程。
Here at Nodor, we're going to produce some videos for you too.
我们沃道也会给大家，我们在制作一些视频。
But we're starting off with Stephen Forrest.
但是我们最这个现在的视频呢，是从 Stephen 弗里瑟老师的视频开始。
And we've got his video on Saturn and Scorpio through the 12 houses already up today.
那么今天呢，我们正式推出了 Stephen 老师的土星行进12宫这样一个视频。
So we've been working hard to get this up.
我们就是做了很多工作终于把这个视频推出来了。
So I just wanted to let you know about it.
所以说给大家讲一下。
So thank you very much. I hope you will use these lunar return charts from time to time. You can see how significant and helpful they can be.
我希望大家能够时不时的来用一下这样月亮反照图，然后看一看它是不是对你们有帮助，怎么能够对你们有帮助。
All right. Any other questions there?
The question, it's just about divorce. You see a moon.
Which divorce?
The divorce, the close the divorce deal.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
So what's the question?
She said, we see that moon and the three liberal planets trine, and you said we better close the deal as fast as we could. So if we do not know if we can partner with someone, it's just an oral deal. Is that meaningful to see the liberal thing in lunar return chart?
You mean an oral agreement?
An oral agreement. Do you
well, in the U.S. we say that an oral, or we call it verbal, a verbal agreement is as good as the paper it's on, which means it ain't any good.
It's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying verbal agreements don't mean shit. People can always go back on verbal agreements. I'm just saying. I mean, if all you had was a verbal agreement, if you was like confessing love to somebody or something like that, sure, it's a good chart for that.
如果是你们的这个口头协议，就是说你想向别人表达爱意的话，那么这个图没有什么问题。
But I'm just saying.
不过他觉得没有什么。
In the U.S.
在美国的话。
In the U.S. we're very strict about contracts. Contract law is a big thing in the U.S. Why do you have so many lawyers?
在美国呢，真的是这个合同法是非常重要的，这是 为什么我们有那么多律师的原因，就是要达成真的合同。
That's why the joke in the U.S. is that a verbal agreement is as good as the paper it's written on. Meaning it ain't written on anything. It's not any good.
所以说美国他们有句歇后语说，这是一个口头协议，最好也就是像那些还没写的一张白纸，就是一个口头协议不过是一张白纸。
Yeah. So yeah, this would be fine for other things, sure.
And also, if they have already partnered with each other, what should we see to see if the other part is creditable or not, whether it's compatible to do business together?
Oh, you've got to look at the natal charts comparing to each other. This is just a lunar return.
那个孟星这个问题呢，老师说你肯定要看水本命盘了，这只不过是月亮反照图，你肯定要看本命盘两个人是否合适了。
The lunar return kind of works in support. It's kind of a support chart for all the other charts you've got.
你要把月亮反照图呢看成一个支持星图，它支持的是你所有的其他的星图。
Sometimes it's kind of a wake up. It's like I'll be looking at everything in a chart. I'll be looking at transits and progressions and trying to figure out how to help my client, and I get stuck sometimes. I get stuck.
有时候月亮反照盘呢，也是让你就是让你清醒一下的盘，因为当时你可能已经看了行星啊、二次性了、太阳弧了，但是你觉得你好像陷在哪里了，你不知道该怎么讲了。
When I get stuck, I need something that's going to wake me up.
但如果是我陷在某个地方的时候呢，我就需要其他的一些东西让我清醒一下。
So that's when I'll do either a solar return or a lunar return.
那个时候我就会做一张太阳反照盘或者是月亮反照盘。
Because I feel like I don't know enough.
因为我觉得我还知道的不够多。
Meaning I don't know enough to help my client.
我的意思就是我不知道，我还需要知道更多的事情才能帮助我的客户。
And for me, since I'm a practicing astrologer, that's what my every day is about. Every day, how can I help my client?
那么对我来说，因为我是个咨询占星师，所以说我每天都要做这样的工作，就是我怎么才能帮助我的客户。
That's been the first thing in my mind almost every day for 39 years.
39年来，就是每天这个我醒来的第一件事就要想这个事儿。
Okay, all right. Okay, there we go. All right, enjoy, people. Work hard.
好吧。
All right.
好好学习。
Bye bye. 再见。Bye bye.
Bye bye.